Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mass Retirees Weekly Update. Today's Friday, July 28th. I'm Sean Duhamel. Thank you so much for joining with us and tuning in again this week. Now, before I talk about the news of the week, which is going to focus on our pension fund returns for the first 6 months of 2023, which is very positive news, let me first just give you a quick update on some of the other activities that are going on. Now, last week's message, if you recall, focused on the upcoming public hearing of the Joint Committee on Public Service, which is chaired by State Representative Ken Gordon from Bedford, Mass., as well as State Senator Mike Brady from Brockton, Mass. The hearing took place this past Tuesday afternoon. Tom Bonarigo, Nancy McGovern, and I testified on the 6 or 7 different bills that were before the committee that are sponsored by our association. Our testimony was very well received. In addition to our own bills, which you can find the details on in last week's message, but in addition to those bills, there was also a couple of other bills that we were recorded in favor of. One is a bill filed by State Representative Paul Donato relative to the appointment of the 5th member on retirement boards. We believe that that process should be a little bit fairer in terms of there's a disagreement amongst board members of who makes that final appointment. So we were recorded in favor of that. We were also recorded in favor of legislation that was filed by State Senator Nick Collins from South Boston that has the support of our public safety community and public safety unions. This piece of legislation would create a disability assumption or a line of duty death assumption related to infectious disease. Right now, under the current law, if one of our first responders falls ill due to an infectious disease, that they may have been pricked by a needle or through bodily fluids of someone that they're treating, there is no presumption in the law that that illness was caused by the job. Now, of course, we have a cancer presumption, we have a heart law presumption. Those presumptions more or less have been in effect now for several decades, and they protect our first responders. We firmly believe, and we testified as to this at the hearing, we believe that it is our responsibility to protect those who protect us. And that also goes in terms of protecting your families. If something happens to you, we have to stand by and make sure that your family is protected, and this legislation goes a long way toward that. Now, this is not a new concept. It's been filed now for several years in a row, but we lent our support to it because we believe that this is an important issue that should be addressed. Now, in terms of the news of the week, we have some really positive news coming in that we have been waiting for now, really since the end of June. Over this past week, the Pension Reserves Investment Trust Fund, the so-called PRIT fund, which is managed by the Pension Reserves Investment Management Board, the PRIM board. And it gets a little bit confusing, these different acronyms, but the PRIM board manages the PRIT fund. PRIT encompasses the state and teacher retirement systems, as well as the investments of 70 some odd local retirement systems that choose to invest either all or the bulk of their local pension assets through the state system. Many systems also invest on their own, whether it's a part of their portfolio or their own portfolio. But PRIM manages the bulk of the public pension fund investments in Massachusetts. As of June 30th, the PRIT fund was worth some $96 billion. Now, before 2022 and the down market that was experienced last year, where the PRIT fund lost a little bit over 11%, that includes the payment of fees, and those losses are consistent to what we've seen across both public and private pension systems across the country, or any kind of large assets, investment assets. Everybody lost money last year. PRIT and our local systems here in Massachusetts are not unique in that standpoint. What is unique and what is a positive development, that even in a down market, your pension funds and investments were protected as best as possible. The PRIT fund or the PRIM board, I should say, is chaired by State Treasurer Deb Goldberg. It is managed by Michael Trotsky as the executive director and chief investment officer. Mr. Trotsky will be our guest in September for a virtual teletown hall event. The last time he joined us, about a year and a half ago, that meeting was very well attended amongst our members. I think people are very eager to hear directly from Mr. Trotsky and learn just how your pension funds are being invested on your behalf. And PRIT has been extremely successful over the years. And as I said at the outset, we were eagerly awaiting the numbers for the first 6 months of the year, and those numbers are very positive. Through June, the PRIT fund has earned 6.69%, which if you annualize that, it's over a 13% return for the entire year. And the way that our pension funds are viewed is that over the life of the fund, which runs in perpetuity, but for the purposes of our systems, we have had a 40-year pension funding schedule that's been designed to pay off any unfunded liabilities and so forth that had built up prior to the modern pension funding system or mechanism being in place. And that system took effect back in 1988. So from 1988 through now, PRIT has returned on average a 9.24% return since 1988, which is fantastic. Any of us in our 401k or any type of retirement accounts that we hold privately would love to have a 9.24% return over the life of that fund. PRIT has done a very good job of managing and protecting those assets. Now, why this is so important is that even though our pension systems here in Massachusetts are defined benefit systems, meaning that you get a set retirement benefit that can never be taken away from you, regardless of how the financial markets might perform. That's very different than what's known as a defined contribution plan, which is more or less like a 401k or a private retirement account, which is very dependent, entirely dependent, if you will, on how the financial investments perform year in and year out. A defined benefit, or a DB plan as they're referred to, works on the basis of you have a certain number of years of service, you're a certain age, you have a certain salary calculation. That is what determines your benefit. Now, where the investment returns come into play is in a few different areas. One, just the long-term viability and stability and sustainability of the system really depends on how well the system is functioning. And our systems here in Massachusetts, across all 104 public pension systems, have done extremely well and continue to do well. However, for our purposes, what we look for is how well the system is doing in terms of our ability to improve benefits. And you know that our focus over the last several years, really since the creation of Mass Retirees back in 1968, our primary focus when it comes to your pension has been growing and improving the cost of living adjustment, the COLA, whether it's the percentage, whether it's making sure that the COLA is paid every year on a regular basis, or that the COLA base continues to grow over time. And the investment returns, how well the system has done or will continue to do, really plays a critical role in that process. Now, as all of you know, we have been working to increase the state and teacher COLA base, which is a function of the state legislature. Right now, the COLA base is only $13,000. It has been at $13,000 for the last 12 years. During this current budget cycle for FY24, we made an attempt to push to increase the state and teacher base to a new level of $16,000. Unfortunately, the legislature chose not to move forward with that proposal at the current time, largely due to the cost. For each $1,000 increase in the COLA base, we're adding approximately $500 million in new unfunded liability. So to increase the base by $13,000 to go to a $16,000 base adds $1.5 billion in new costs, new unfunded liability to the pension system that has to be paid off over time. Now, to pay off that debt, there are a couple of different ways you can go about doing that. The ideal way is to use the investment returns, or what we call excess investment returns. So the system assumes it's going to earn 7% a year on its investments on average. Some years, like 2022, we're going to suffer a loss. It's inevitable. And again, last year's loss was around 11.2%. This year, the markets are up. And again, through June, we're up 6.69%, which is a phenomenal return so far. In 2021, so 2 years ago, the system earned over 20%. But the system assumes that over the long haul, we're going to come in with an average of 7%. Now, what our argument is that the excess returns, the money that we're earning above and beyond what the assumed rate is, some of that money should be shared with retirees and used to help to pay for improved COLA benefits and improved COLA base. We believe it's only fair, it's only right. That's your money. These trust funds were set up to benefit public retirees. As you know, we do not participate in Social Security for our public employees here in Massachusetts. So the pension systems are, by and large, in many cases, the only source, or certainly the primary source of retirement income. And that's what makes the continuation of COLA improvements that much more important than even what private sector workers would face. At the local level, the majority of local retirement systems have done a fantastic job of incrementally increasing the COLA base year in and year out, or at least every few years going forward. And we need to play some catch up at the state level. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, our biggest challenge in Massachusetts in terms of our pension funding has been paying off the unfunded liabilities that had accumulated up until the late 80s. In 1988, when modern pension funding and the systems were reformed and the funding schedules were put in place, and state and local governments were therefore required to pay their share of the annual pension costs, we were behind the 8 ball. We were the second worst funded pension system in the entire country, second only to Mississippi. And we had a lot of ways to go to make up for lost time. And unfortunately, none of us have a time machine. You can't go back and redo things. You can only move forward. And since 1988, we have done a phenomenal job at both the state and the local level. Both retirement board members, the professional money managers that are employed, certainly the staff at the Pritt Fund, have done a fantastic job of paying down that debt. And we were getting very close at this point that over the next 15 years, hopefully all retirement systems in Massachusetts will have paid off their debt. And then we need to figure out how that process is going to work going forward. But as of today, we have 6 of the 104 Massachusetts public pension systems, 6 systems are fully funded, meaning that they have enough cash on hand today that if you froze everything in time, that no more money was coming in, no more investment earnings were being generated, that there would be enough cash on hand to pay every penny that's owed to both current retirees as well as future retirees, those active employees who are vested in the system. That's what full funding means. Now, we have another dozen or so systems that will be fully funded by the end of this decade. So by 2029, 2030, we'll have another, again, 10 to 12 systems that will be fully funded. The largest system amongst those systems is the City of Boston, which as of today is scheduled to be fully funded in 2027, which is only 4 years from now. So we're getting very close. Now, I have been with Mass Retirees now for 29 years, and when I started back in 1994, the pension funding schedules and so forth had really only come into play just 6 years prior. So we have made up a lot of ground over that period of time, and it's a good problem to have now that we're getting close to all of the systems being fully funded, which means that hopefully we're going to be able to enhance those COLA benefits on a more regular basis. So that's why we're so excited to see these returns. Now, we still have another 6 months to go. July has been a pretty good month in terms of the investment markets, both here in the United States and around the country, around the globe. Because remember, the economy is a global economy. It's not just determined on what's happening here in Massachusetts or what's happening in the United States, it is globally. So if something happens like the war in Ukraine, that affects how our pension systems are doing. There's no way around that. Everything is interrelated, more now than ever before, and that will probably exist and become even more complicated going forward. So with that, let me sign off for today. I know we're at the 15-minute mark. These are running a little bit long. I apologize. For those of you watching all the way to the end, thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know also if you have ideas for future weekly updates. We're always looking for input from our members. I want to know, and our staff here wants to know, what you have in mind, what you would like more information on, or some clarification, or some things that maybe we've overlooked. We want to hear from you. So with that, I hope you're enjoying the summer. Stay cool during these heat waves that we're having. I know it's supposed to be hot in the summer, but these heat waves, at least this year, tend to be a little bit worse than normal. But with that, I will talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.